Open YouTube right now and search for someone eating. Not a recipe, not a cooking show. Just someone eating in front of a camera. Billions of views, hundreds of millions of subscribers across thousands of channels. People watching strangers eat ramen, chips, mukbang, ASMR, food videos, sometimes for hours. And if you've ever watched one, even for 30 seconds, you probably felt something you couldn't explain. A kind of calm, a faint satisfaction. Maybe even something close to hunger, for food you don't have and aren't eating. You are not strange. You are not developing a disorder. You are experiencing the intersection of three of the most fascinating systems in your brain. Systems that evolved for reasons that have nothing to do with YouTube and everything to do with what it means to be human. Today's video sits at the intersection of three things. Mirror neurons, the system that makes you flinch when someone else gets hurt and laugh when someone else laughs. ASMR, autonomous sensory meridian response, the tingling sensation triggered by certain sounds that researchers spent decades dismissing before realizing it was one of the most common neurological experiences on Earth. And social eating, one of the oldest and most deeply wired human bonding behaviors in existence. Put these three things together, and a stranger eating noodles on a screen becomes something your brain processes as profoundly meaningful. Here's why. In 1992, a research team at the University of Parma, Italy, was studying motor neurons in macaque monkeys. They had implanted electrodes in the premotor cortex, the area of the brain responsible for planning movements. The experiment was straightforward. When a monkey reached for a peanut, specific neurons fired. They recorded which neurons. They mapped the patterns. Then something happened that wasn't in the protocol. A researcher walked into the lab eating an ice cream cone. And the electrodes, connected to a monkey sitting completely still, not moving, not reaching for anything, began firing. The same neurons that fired when the monkey grabbed food were firing while the monkey watched someone else grab food. The monkey's brain was simulating the action it was observing, as if it were performing the action itself. Lead researcher Giacomo Rizzolatti initially thought the equipment had malfunctioned. It hadn't. He had discovered what would become one of the most discussed findings in modern neuroscience: mirror neurons. The implications took years to fully process. Here is what mirror neurons do. When you watch someone perform an action, your brain doesn't just observe passively. It runs a simulation. It activates the same motor programs that would be required if you were performing that action. Not at full strength. Not enough to actually move your body, but enough to create a faint internal echo of the experience. When you watch someone bite into a burger, your brain simulates biting into a burger. When you watch someone's face contort in pain, your brain simulates pain. When you watch someone laugh, your brain simulates laughing. Which is why laughter is contagious. Which is why you laugh at funerals when someone else does and feel horrified about it afterward. This is not metaphorical. This is measurable neural activity in specific brain regions that can be observed on an fMRI scan. You are never just watching. You are always, to some degree, doing. For years, millions of people knew something that science refused to study. Certain sounds produced a specific physical sensation. A gentle tingling that started at the scalp and moved down the neck and spine. A profound relaxation. A feeling that some described as the opposite of anxiety. A warm, focused, content stillness. The sounds that triggered it were specific and consistent. Soft speaking, whispering, the sound of pages turning, tapping on surfaces, and the sound of eating, crunching, slurping, the quiet rhythm of chewing. People didn't talk about it publicly because it sounded strange, because there was no word for it. In 2010, a journalist named Jennifer Allen coined the term ASMR, autonomous sensory meridian response, specifically to give the experience a name that sounded clinical enough to be taken seriously. It worked. Research followed. In 2018, a study at the University of Sheffield published in PLOS One confirmed what millions already knew. ASMR was real, measurable, consistent. neurologically distinct. People who experienced ASMR showed significant reductions in heart rate and significant increases in positive affect, calm, focused pleasure, when exposed to ASMR triggers. The effect was comparable to the relaxation response produced by mindfulness meditation, from a stranger whispering or tapping their fingernails on a microphone. Of all ASMR triggers, eating sounds are among the most universally effective. The specific combination of textures, rhythms, and frequencies produced by eating activates something ancient in the human auditory system. Here is the evolutionary hypothesis. For most of human history, the sound of eating meant safety. If you could hear others eating, it meant there was food. It meant the group was alive and together. It meant no predator was nearby because predators don't eat while hunting. The sound of communal eating was one of the most reliable acoustic signals that the environment was safe. Your brain learned, over hundreds of thousands of years, to associate eating sounds with safety, warmth, and social belonging. That association is still there, encoded in your auditory processing system at a level below conscious thought. When you put on headphones and listen to someone eat crunchy chips in a quiet room, your ancient brain receives a signal. Food is here, group is safe, all is well, and your nervous system responds accordingly. Here is something remarkable about human eating behavior compared to almost every other species. We insist on eating together, not because it's more efficient. It isn't. You can consume calories alone in 30 seconds. Not because it's necessary for survival. It isn't. Food doesn't require witnesses. We eat together because for our entire evolutionary history, shared meals were the primary mechanism for social bonding, trust building, and group cohesion. The shared meal is older than language. Older than fire, though fire made it better. It is the foundational social technology of our species. Research in social psychology consistently shows that people who eat together trust each other more, negotiate more successfully, report higher levels of satisfaction with their relationships, are more likely to cooperate in subsequent tasks. A 2017 study found that firefighters who cooked and ate together performed better as teams in emergencies than those who didn't, even controlling for every other variable. The meal is not just nutrition. The meal is the primary ritual through which human beings signal to each other. We are the same group. You are safe with me. I am safe with you. Here is where it gets uncomfortable. The phenomenon of watching others eat, mukbang, food ASMR, eating videos, exploded in South Korea first. South Korea has one of the highest rates of single-person households in the world. One of the highest rates of eating alone. The word onbap, eating alone, entered the Korean lexicon as a cultural phenomenon. Something to be studied. Something to be managed. The first mukbang creators, ordinary people eating on camera, described their viewers as lonely people who wanted the experience of eating with someone without the social requirements of actual company. Not a replacement for human connection. A simulation of it. And your brain, with its mirror neurons running, with its ancient association between eating sounds and safety, with its deep wiring for the communal meal, accepts the simulation. Not perfectly. Not as a substitute for real human contact. But enough. Enough to lower cortisol. Enough to reduce the physiological markers of loneliness. Enough to provide a faint echo of the oldest social ritual our species has. This is not pathetic. This is your brain doing exactly what it was designed to do, finding safety in the sound of others eating in a world where fewer and fewer of us eat together anymore. Not everyone responds this way. For roughly 20% of the population, eating sounds produce the opposite response. Not calm, not satisfaction, rage, disgust, panic, a visceral, overwhelming need to get away from the sound. This is called misophonia, literally, hatred of sound, and it is not a personality flaw. It is not rudeness or sensitivity. It is a neurological condition in which the auditory emotional processing pathway runs in the opposite direction. Where most people's brains link eating sounds to safety and social belonging, the misophonic brain links them to threat and danger. Research published in 2021 found that misophonic individuals show abnormal connectivity between the auditory cortex and the anterior insular cortex, the region associated with disgust, pain, and visceral threat response. The same sound. Two completely opposite neurological responses. Neither is a choice. Both are ancient systems running on slightly different wiring. If you have misophonia, the world of ASMR is not for you. And now you know why. The global rise of food content, ASMR, mukbang, cooking shows, food videos, is not just an entertainment trend. It is a data point about the epidemic of modern loneliness. Since the 1970s, rates of eating alone in developed countries have risen consistently. In the United States, over 50% of meals are now consumed alone. The communal meal, the oldest bonding ritual of our species, is quietly disappearing from daily life. And in its absence, billions of people are opening YouTube and watching strangers eat. Not because they are broken, not because they are pathetic, because their mirror neurons are working perfectly, because their ancient auditory safety system is working perfectly, because their deep need for the social meal is working perfectly. The hunger that food videos satisfy is not for food. It is for the sound of another human being present and alive sharing a meal in the same space as you. Even if that space is a screen. Even if that human is a stranger. The brain, as we have seen in every video on this channel, does not always distinguish between the real and the simulated. It responds to what it perceives. And what it perceives is that you are not alone. The next time you find yourself watching a stranger eat on your screen, don't minimize the tab. Notice what you feel. The slight relaxation of your shoulders. The faint slowing of your breath. The ambient sense that somewhere, someone is present. That feeling is 200,000 years old. It is the feeling of sitting around a fire with people who will not hurt you. Of hearing the sounds that mean, food is here, group is safe, the night will pass. Your brain doesn't know it's a screen. It doesn't know the stranger will never know your name. It knows only what it has always known. The sound of eating means you are not alone. And sometimes, that is enough. Everything we've talked about today depends on one thing: the ability of your brain to simulate another person's experience. To hear their eating and feel something. To watch their pain and flinch. To see their joy and smile. This ability has a name: empathy. And in 2011, a team of neuroscientists at the University of Cambridge made a discovery about empathy that almost no one talks about. They found that empathy, the most celebrated human virtue, the foundation of morality, cooperation, and love, can be turned off. Not metaphorically. Not gradually through hardship or trauma. Deliberately. Instantly. On demand. And the mechanism by which it gets turned off is not cruelty. It is something far more ordinary. Something every person does every day. Something you almost certainly did in the last 24 hours. That mechanism has a name, and understanding it will change how you see every interaction you have with other people. That is next.